You covered and lost Liz for a second. I was just looking for Liz. So we were. Yeah. It's good. We have Fran, Robert, and yes, please. Good evening. Education. This is Joe Sawyer, President of the Board of Education speaking. Thank you for attending Zoom or in person. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
The flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So today's meeting has been provided to the public. Each member on the Board of Education is required by law to list of attendance.
Present. Present.
Present. Present.
Dr. Kingston Ross, Superintendent of Schools.
Present.
Dennis Harkis, Superintendent for Business and Finance. Clerk,
Present.
Amy McLaughlin, Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources and Leadership Development.
Present.
Dr. Alice Bowman, Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction.
Present.
Jacobson, District Council, Rocio Garcia.
Present.
John Sheehan, District Council, Rocio Garcia.
To accept the agenda for April 23rd, 2025 regular session as presented.
So.
All in favor? Aye. We're going to go to commendations, so we'll hand the mic over to Dr. Sigmund.
All right, thank you, Mr. Cilio. And we have many of our students to recognize this evening. First, we'll start off with our National Merit Scholarship finalists. So when I call your name up, come on up. So we are very proud to recognize 9 students who were named National Merit Scholarship finalists. And this is an extraordinary academic achievement. These students represent the top scholars in the nation, and their hard work and commitment to excellence are really, truly admirable. We celebrate not only their accomplishments, but their dedication and discipline it took to get here. So congratulations to all of our students. So I'm going to call you up. Soham Brown, come on up. Manav Jain. Rafael. Hunter McGuire. Simone Atstacher. Daniel Shoddy. Amy Zhao. Lin Yang and Alicia Zhang. Congratulations again. And we also want to thank your families, teachers, and mentors for helping you achieve this distinction. Thank you again. All right, we have our athletic teams, the winter student athletes to recognize this evening. So we're very proud to recognize these outstanding student athletes from the winter season. Again, their dedication, teamwork, and perseverance were on full display, both on and off the field. Balancing the demands of athletics and academics is no small task. And these students have done it with commitment and hard work. So congratulations to all of our to this fantastic season. And I would like to invite Mr. Ramirez to come up and, talk about each one of the teams and introduce our students and coaches.
Here at Garden City, it gets caught between that successful fall and that spring. Sometimes it gets overshadowed. This winter, these group of students really stood out, not only on a high school level, but on a state level. The students that are being recognized today all qualified for state championships. Losing my phys ed board. All right, here we go. So we're going to start with boys varsity swimming and dive. And I'd also like to bring up Coach Ann Sullivan with these two gentlemen, Liam Hardy, who qualified for the state championships, and Julian Clark. So Liam qualified in the 500-meter freestyle, finishing as one of the top Nassau County swimmers in that event. He competed at the state championships. Julian was a diver. He finished second in Nassau County and third place in the New York State Championship. Both are juniors and returning. Very demanding sport. Practices are early in the morning. Very competitive atmosphere. So congratulations to them and to Coach for getting to the state championship. Our next athlete is Gabe Cohen, varsity wrestling. He is here with Coach Brad Hepworth. If Coach Hepworth would come up. So we had a little gap of about 5 or 6 years without an all-county wrestler, and Gabe broke that streak for us this year, glad to say. He was not only all-county, he was third place in the Nassau Championships at 145 pounds, competed at the state championships, had a great tournament. We look for bigger things next year. He also just placed 6th at a Northeast National Tournament down in Jersey, and he'll be representing Garden City at the Nassau versus Suffolk championship, all-star meet this weekend. Gabe had an outstanding year, and we look forward to a bigger year next year. Congratulations, Gabe, and Coach Hepworth. This next group of athletes is our boys indoor track and field. We have 5 athletes. I'd like to bring up Coach Dre and Coach Lucas up first as well. The first athlete, and then I'll call the other 4, is DJ McDonough. DJ, come up. So if you follow the Instagram, GC Trojan Nation, you'll know that DJ breaks a record every other week. He qualified for the state championships in 2 events. He earned all-state honor in both. First, the 600-meter, which is 3 laps. He ran that in record-breaking time, and he was also part of the 4x400 relay team that went upstate. And those gentlemen can come up here now. They were also all-state. Chris Byrne, Charles Nguyen, Luke Weber, and Connor Wellbrock, 4x400 relay. And together, they not only placed at the states, they broke the school record, running a 3-minute 21.59 time, which is the fastest for a 4x400 here at Garden City. And DJ's record for the 600 is 1:30.34 minutes. That's 3 times in 1:30, which is mind-boggling. Congratulations. So this last group is our girls indoor track and field with Coach Skravanek and Coach Johnson. If everyone could come up too many to name, but I'll go over some highlights of the season. So I happened to have the honor to watch them compete at the county championship. And when I got there, I spoke to Coach Scrivani. Coach, how are we gonna do? We're good. We're good. I don't know if we can win it, but we're good. All of a sudden I get a text, hey, we won. So it kind of stumbled into a county championships. They had a tremendous performance, 11 all-county athletes. The team doesn't qualify for the states, but the individuals do. I think, Coach, I'm gonna put you on the spot. 11 all-county, how many champions? Do you remember? Three Nassau County champions from Garden City. So that was a phenomenal performance that night. And the relay, so a little more than three. We also had Kira. Kira, take a step up. Kira had a phenomenal season as an individual. Kira won the 600-meter event and earned a spot at the New York State Championship. She was also part of the relay team. Unfortunately for Kira, she fell ill the week of the state championships. The good news is she's a junior, so we expect her to get up there next year or this spring. Great performance as a team. It was a pleasure to watch them, how they cheer each other on, how they help each other. To win a Nassau County championship in any sport is very hard. Track is a different level at times. So congratulations to you. No pressure for the underclassmen. 2 in a row would be great next year. So let's do that. Coaches, thank you. Congratulations. Great job. And then while we take this picture, I just want to thank all the coaches because the amount of time that they put in to help these students peak and to get to the state championships is unbelievable. They spend a lot of nights, weekends, not only preparing, but planning at home. So on behalf of everyone, thank you for your time and thank you for the sacrifice you make with your own families to be here. Thank you. And then I have 2 individuals that could not make it tonight, but I do want to acknowledge them. The first one is Coach Steve Fennell. Mr. Fennell was recognized on a national level. He was the 2024 High School Broyles Award recipient. He flew out to Little Rock, Arkansas. That's where it was given out. He was one of a few national coaches at the high school level who received the award as top assistant high school coach on a national level. He is the first Garden City. He is the first Long Island. He is the first New York high school coach to receive that. Coach Fennell. And Coach Fennell, while I'm on it, is having an outstanding lacrosse season right now, ranked #1 in New York State, has 1 loss to a top team from Maryland. Our next coach who could not be here is Coach Ettinger. He was recognized at the New York State Football Coaches Association Conference in Syracuse as the head coach of the year for the Class A division. He becomes, I believe, the first coach from Garden City to receive that award and one of a handful of coaches from Long Island to have ever received that award. He is also having an outstanding year with lacrosse, currently ranked #1 in the state. Only losses coming in overtime to nationally ranked Darien, who's #2, and a season opener to #13 Bayport. Both coaches nationally recognized. I wanted to make sure I gave them their flowers and their just due. So congratulations to both. And before I hand the mic over, just want to say we're incredibly fortunate to have all these coaches who do more than just teach the game. They build character, inspire growth, lead with heart. Their impact lasts beyond the final whistle. Thank you to the coaches.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez, and thank you to all of our coaches, as of course, our student athletes. You had a wonderful season. Thank you.
Mrs. DiCaprio, would you like to give the treasurer's report?
Certainly, thank you. This is the treasurer's report for February 2025. We had a cash balance of the beginning of the month of 65,010,720. do this a little closer. We had receipts during February of 1,295,887. We had disbursements in February of 10,011,642, leaving us with a closing balance of 56,294,966. Thank you.
Dr. Sinio, would you like to give the superintendent's report now?
Sure. On the agenda, well, before I begin, I just wanted to mention that we had our 10-year reception. Could you have the 10-year candidates on the agenda this evening? And there are 28 individuals up for tenure this year. It was probably the largest that we've had. It was a wonderful reception, and just real proud of the folks that are on that list. So with that, on the agenda, you'll see that there are several policies. There are policies, there's one policy that is there for the first read, which is the fairness in school sponsored activities. And this policy states the district's desire to foster a fair and inclusive environment that is also transparent regarding all school sponsored activities. This policy, as well as the other policies under consideration, will be on the district website to get, public comments, which we've done. We do that every time there's a policy up for reading. There are second readings for the following policies, which is the ex officio student member of the Board of Education. Again, this is a new policy. We discussed it at the last board meeting. The sexual harassment grievance under Title IX. The responsible use policy, the independent educational evaluation policies, those were updated and really to be more current with the language within those policies. So that's up for second reading. And then the extreme heat conditions and the artificial intelligence, those two policies, that's also there for the second reading, but these are again new policies, so they'll be back up again. We'll do 3 readings on these policies. And, they'll be up on our website. We had mentioned to the board, we're going through all of our policies, and, Ms. Jacobson will be reviewing that with us and going through the series of each one of them to update these policies. So, and we're actually looking forward to having a student on the dais here with us starting in July. All right, some other updates. We're proud that our middle school is once again has been named Gold Star No Place for Hate School. And this recognition really reflects the school's ongoing commitment to fostering a culture of kindness, inclusion, and respect. So really congratulations to our student, staff, and leadership for creating a place where every voice is valued and heard in our schools. We also have kindergarten screenings that started this week, and it started on Monday and will continue through May 9th. And students who are attending the Homestead UPK and the Harbor Childcare, they will be screened at their locations, and everyone else, they'll go to their home school to be registered. And just 2 other updates that I wanted to, would like Ms. McLaughlin to give an update on the hiring.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Sinha. So it's hiring season and we are very busy. We have currently well underway, a search for our new coordinator of social studies and world language. We hope to have an appointment for the May board meeting. Coordinator for music and art, that's also underway. Middle school principal is also underway. Hoping for a May appointment, might have to be a June appointment. We're trying very hard to make it May. And we have several teaching positions, both gen ed, special ed, high school, middle school. So all of the administrators are very much involved in the hiring, and we're busy, and we're confident that we're going to bring wonderful candidates to Garden City. Thinking about the folks that we hired 3 and 4 years ago that we honored tonight. They're a great group. We'll keep that bar set very high. So thank you.
Thanks, Ms. McLaughlin. And then Dr. Bellman, could you give an update on the literacy review and the upcoming UPK review?
Sure, absolutely. We have sent out surveys to our students in grades 3 through 9. In our 7 through 9 survey, we had 522 respondents. And from our students in grades 3 through 6, we had 1,100 responses. From our parents, we had 241 responses, and I think it's important to share that that link is still live. So if you review your parent squares as parents, you can go back and if you haven't, please consider submitting a response to that survey. And we had 102 of our K-6 teachers who teach in literacy respond to the surveys, to that survey. We have finished, or the literacy consultants, I say we because I scheduled them, so sorry. The focus groups have been completed. We had 3 different focus groups focused on teachers, reading group, K-2 and 3 through 6 teachers. Our administrators, coordinators, principals, and central office staff. We had a focus group for parents. Our literacy committee was invited to participate. And we had a focus group for the Board of Education. Still left, we also had interviews with the superintendent and also our director of literacy. Those were one-on-one. Upcoming after our New York State assessments on May 14th and 15th, we will be having site visits where CASA will be coming to the 3 primaries and 2 elementary schools over the course of those 2 days to be able to see instruction in action. Tomorrow, we will be visited by New York State Education Department to conduct our quality assurance protocol review for the UPK program that we have. Over the last few months, we've collected much evidence to provide to the state to determine the level of compliance that we have. And I am proud to say that we have been approved for everything that we've sent forward. One of the things that we are hoping for is some feedback from the state on how we can always continually grow and learn. And especially considering the amount of growth that we expect next year from our UPK program.
Thank you, Dr. Bowman. Some other items on the agenda is our proposed budget, which is there on the agenda for adoption. So I want to briefly, you've seen this before on our budget, but just to give you again a brief overview of what we have shared the last several board meetings. So again, when we talk about our budget, we think about our mission and vision at all times. This number has not changed, which is our proposed budget for next school year is at $137,760,845, budget to budget increase of 2.82%, and the tax levy, the maximum allowable tax levy at 2.42%. And we shared the budget in these 3 in the 3-part with capital, administration, and program. Here are the numbers in those 3 parts. Again, you've seen all of this before. And these are the major categories of the proposed budget that Mr. Capia has reviewed, I think, at each one of the sessions. And just in terms of, what we started the budget process with was giving you, really talking about how do we continue to ensure that this budget has the high quality education, that our schools are, supportive, that we have resources to ensure that, our students are thriving and that we're fiscally responsible. And we want to maintain that balance between fiscal constraints and, the offerings, the educational offerings that we have, along with looking at our efficiencies within our district. These are the priorities that we had gone over. I won't read each one of them, but again, this will be on our website. There's nothing new on these slides. So on the ballot, again, the vote is May 20th. And you have the school district budget and the election of 2 Board of Education trustees. So tonight on the agenda is the adoption of the budget. And then the budget hearing will be on May 13th, followed by the budget vote and election on May 20th. Okay. And again, all of this, we have on our website, a section on the budget. All of the information we have presented, to you is on the website, the slides, and of course, the audio recording as well. And just some other items on the budget. Again, I talked about earlier, we have the 10-year candidates, and I really want to stress that Ms. McLaughlin said, we really work hard at hiring, good educators in our district. And, we're honored to recognize really their contributions and their continued impact that'll be here for as long as they're here. And then talked about the budget. The Scope Summer Program is also on the agenda. Mr. Side, who is one of our teachers, our fifth grade teacher, he really does an excellent job running the program, and the offerings are, I think we have AM, PM sessions, and we've really expanded that summer program. There are several bid awards on the agenda, and again, related to the high school expansion, the bond that was approved last year. So all of that work, those bids are on the agenda. We also have, and again, this will be a discussion for the board members, is the BOCES budget and election of members to the BOCES board that we'll be discussing in a little bit. That's it.
Thank you.
Are there any reports or questions from the board?
I just had a quick question for Dr. Bowman, and you may not have this information right this moment, but you had mentioned in response to the surveys that were sent out that there were 102 K through 6 teachers that had completed the survey. I was just wondering, what percentage is that of all of our K through 6 staff that would have received that survey?
If it's not 100%, it's like 97%.
Okay.
Yeah, they were very, very responsive.
Okay, wonderful. And then, and were those, that was anonymous? Did
Yes.
they? Yes. And then, the 241 responses from the parent community, do we have a percentage of how many responses that is to the parents that would have received that survey?
So I would say
That
that's
might
a
be.
difficult metric to come up with. We have 4,000 students, which there's multiples, but no idea how many the average number of so I can't really say.
Okay.
It's not as high as we would like, which is
Right.
why I'm saying if any families are listening and have access to the link, which is posted and also in the Parent Square, we're happy to get your feedback.
Well, thank you. And then I just wanted to share that this was my first opportunity being able to attend the 10-year reception. And it was a really wonderful celebration of the achievements and the impact that our staff, our teachers, administrators have had on children in our school district and with their colleagues. So it was a really wonderful celebration.
I just have maybe 2 quick questions on the construction project. When do we, just for everybody's edification, it's been a while, when do we think we're going to break ground on the new construction? And also, when do you think we'll be able to start working on the facilities, i.e. the sports fields, as part of that process?
So tonight we are awarding the site contractor who will be working on the fields. It's expected that all of that work will be done this summer. And into the fall season. So we would be displaced, Ed, help me with this, over the summer and into the fall. And then soon after that, like October, November, it would be finished.
Yeah.
Correct? Yeah.
Is that going to be staged? I know, because you said disruption, or how do they, because I know all the fields are being turfed in Oak Park.
Well, that's part of that work is some of the stuff that Mr. Ramirez has been working on. So we will have access to the turf field, but it will be a bit of a, walk around. So,
What he has done, Mr. Ramirez, is he's made a plan for where those practices and games will take place because of the disruption to the field.
and he's assigned them to
That's
every
what- yeah.
school and has been very communicative about that. So working with transportation, working with the teams, working with the coaches, the schools and all of that. But there will be, this summer will be a lot on the fields. Plus they'll, we haven't awarded to the general contractor yet. But if all that goes as expected, we would be starting to break ground just on the the site construction for where that's going to go. But that project, as we know, will go over 2 years.
Thank you. Or any other?
Dr. Bowman, it just seems like a low amount of parents' response compared to the number of children that you know, the kids are all excited to do surveys. Anybody think outside the box, maybe do some kind of little take home assignment for the kids to go home and push their parents to jump on this link and do the survey? Everybody, you know, we say it all the time. We don't get the feedback sometimes. If my kids were here, they'd push for extra credit because they're all about extra credit assignments, but something very easy, something very, you know, not burdensome. I don't want to push, but it seems like a lot more children will do it and mom and dad are not.
Yeah, well, you know what, just thinking off the cuff here, that's not a bad idea,
Yeah,
but what I can do is maybe put the link as a QR code and send it out so that maybe you could go home in backpacks.
Yeah.
But I want to think that
Yeah,
through.
we could do that.
That was just off the cuff. But yes, something could be done.
Yeah, I just want to echo that point, Dr. Bowman. Trustee O'Donoghue was copying off to me as usual. Yeah, if we could do like possibly an email blast or robo dialer or something along those lines.
Yeah, we sent it out right before the break, the link, but we can, I like your idea, Mr. O'Donoghue, about sending it.
Seems like the kids
yeah.
are very responsive, as usual.
We had 1,100 of them. Sorry, 1,600 kids respond.
Other questions? It's time for citizens and question comments. If you have any questions, there's some microphones up here. You can feel free to come up and ask a question. You want to just step up and you can go in the front if it's easier.
Good evening, Robert Hurst, 111 Cherry Valley Avenue. Now, I've discussed this topic before, so it's probably not going to be a surprise. As I mentioned at this year's first budget meeting, for the first time in the district's financial report in the management discussion and analysis section in the highlights part, which is on page 4, the school district disclosed the OPEB liability of $148 million. And I looked back, and in the prior 5 reports, this item was not mentioned. And I'm curious, you know, that it was not mentioned because even in one of those years, it was $24 million higher than it was last year. So it isn't as if the amount is at a new high. I would like to know what factors led the Board of Education to include this item in the financial highlights section in the latest annual report, while it was not mentioned in prior reports. In addition, what actions is the board taking to contain this significant liability, as it amounted to 15 times the level of bonded debt, including the energy performance contract? Now, I know most people have trouble understanding large numbers like this, but to dimensionalize it, there are about 7,000 households in Garden City. So this liability amounts to $35,000 per household, to bring it down to a more granular level. And when I first asked this, I asked this question or brought this issue up at the first budget meeting this year, and President Cilio was not present at that meeting. So I'm curious about that. The next issue that I wanted to point out, which I know this similar topic was discussed at the Village in terms of their issue in this matter, but it has not, to my knowledge, been discussed at any of the school meetings. So recently, the school district's financial results have been exhibiting a deteriorating trend as expenditures exceeded revenues by $1.6 million in fiscal 2024 versus surpluses in each of the prior 5 years, which averaged nearly $4 million per year. Moreover, deficits of about $5 million are projected for both this fiscal year and the new fiscal year, as the Board of Education is using appropriations of reserves and part of the fund balance to balance both revenues and expenditures in its budget. Consequently, the Board of Education will need to do a better job of controlling future expenditures, or it will need to pierce the 2% budget cap at some point in the future. Efficiency initiatives need to gain traction as mandatory pension contributions will rise significantly over the next few years, as they have been at unusually low levels due to the very high returns in the equity market. I'd like to point out that over the last 15 years, the S&P 500 index of equities in the US has had the best 15-year performance in the history of the index. And the index was created in the mid-1950s. I think it was either 1956 or 1958. So these unprecedented returns are unlikely to continue, and that will place enormous upward pressure on the required pension contributions for the school district, which are projected to amount to 6% of revenue in the new fiscal year. And it would not surprise me if they exceed 10% in the next couple of years. So that issue needs to be given some thought. And then advances in technology, especially artificial intelligence, should provide abundant cost reduction opportunities for the Board of Education to streamline administrative functions. For example, artificial intelligence has been shown to reduce by 40% the time financial professionals spend compiling data. Moreover, outsourcing opportunities must also be pursued for non-academic functions, as third-party providers can provide services at lower cost than the district's employees, since third-party employees do not receive gold-plated benefits like defined benefit pensions, which, by the way, only 15% of employees in the private sector receive, whereas 85% of employees in the public sector receive those benefits. And that comparison is even more stark for healthcare benefits in retirement, which the district's employees receive. So I just wanted to highlight those things for the board to consider in terms of how they're running the school district's operations. Thank you.
Mrs. DeCap, and then maybe you want to just give a comment or two on the pension comments?
Sure. As far as including it in the financial highlights, we do take the recommendations of the auditors and have added that. We evaluate and we record the OPEB liability and have for many, many years. So that is in the financials. Moving it to the highlights section is just to round out the financial report as it is. As far as the OPEB benefits, those are over the life of the liability. It does include current employees and retirees over their lifetime. We fund our health insurance on a cash basis. That is the full cost that we have had to add into the financials. At one point, they were doing it over a GASB had us integrating it over a little bit over the year. And then at one point, they just had everyone bring it into the financials as those pronouncements changed. So we do fund it on a cash basis. We are fully funded in that sense. The liability as it sits for all employees and retirees over the lifetime is something that we do record. It brings us from the modified accrual to the full accrual basis, which we're required to present both in our financials and therefore compliant with those announcements. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Denora Della Camera, 1 Sunset Lane. I have a couple of questions. So the first question is, I was wondering if you have allocated any part of the budget towards the mandate, the Back to Basics literacy mandate for pre-K to 3rd grade that's coming into effect September 1st, 2025, that requires systematic, sequential, cumulative instruction for English, for ELA, reading and writing.
So what you're referring to, Dr. Della Camera, we have been doing a lot of professional development on that. We started that last year as soon as that came out. And of course, that's part of our process for budgeting. We're waiting for our review to get completed to see if there's additional, but we have funds needed.
You have funds set aside for that just in case?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wasn't clear on the budget. My next question is, I saw on the agenda that you're disposing of 180 desks from the high school. Is that correct? And what's going to replace those desks?
They've already been replaced. What we do is, items that are no longer being used, we will get permission to sell. So we put that on a government-wide, auction, and we do sell them that way. So those desks they haven't been in use in many years. They're older.
So what's there now? Do we have new desks or is it just something else?
I mean, it depends on which location. In some locations, we have.
Well, there's been couches in rooms too, so I'm kind of finding out that. I didn't think it was that funny.
Sorry. I did.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we do.
Well, you do have couches and rooms too.
I
right?
mean, there's flexible
Yeah,
furniture.
flexible
in some
furniture.
Classrooms, it would depend on the classroom and the needs of that instructional space, but we would have both.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening. Joy Jen Kunis, 185 Weatherall Road, speaking tonight on behalf of the Executive Committee of the Garden City PTA. The Executive Committee of the Garden City PTA thanks the administration for your time, care, and tireless effort in preparing the budget for the 2025-2026 school year. We also thank the Board of Education for your diligence in reviewing the budget. We appreciate the engaging and thoughtful presentations explaining this year's budget and the presentations provided to address the concerns of our community. Thank you to the members of our community who attended these budget presentations, asked questions of the administration and the board, and showed an active interest in the future of our schools. As parents, our role in public education as public education advocates cannot be overstated, and we must remain engaged in the school budget process by speaking on behalf of our students here in Garden City and with our elected representatives in Albany. We understand that there are many challenges in preparing a school budget and submitting it for inspection and approval via a public vote. The school's budget must uphold our community's high expectations for quality public education while maintaining the board's commitment to not exceed the allowable tax levy of 2.42%. This year, the budget achieves those goals. It is once fiscally conservative and academically ambitious, guided by the district mission statement with a focus on students at its core. As parents, we are excited for the capital projects already in progress and proposed for the upcoming fiscal year, including the athletic addition and the new turf fields at the high school. Planned boiler work at the high school and middle school and the installation of air conditioning in the large gathering spaces in all our schools will help get all buildings modernized to deal with temperature issues more effectively. We also commend the district for planned modernization of our technology as well, including cybersecurity protection, advisory groups to address emerging AI issues, and a thoughtful balance between limiting and incorporating student devices in the learning environment. We appreciate that over 75% of this budget and most of our past budgets is dedicated to student programs and promises exciting instructional additions and enhancements for all students in grades K through 12. We look forward to receiving the literacy review recommendations in the coming months and commend the administration for including literacy enhancement as a K through 5 priority for the 2025-2026 school year. We're pleased to see thoughtful consideration of parent concerns regarding class size at the middle school with the planned addition of teaching personnel at the middle school and a change to the longstanding master schedule process to permit greater flexibility. We also appreciate the attention given to the diverse learners in our community with the planned increase in ICT classes at the kindergarten and high school levels, the hiring of 2 in-house occupational therapists to provide support to our students, and the continued provision of mental health services to our students and families. This budget continues the Garden City School District's commitment to inspire and challenge students to accomplish their personal best, while also maintaining the board's commitment to fiscal responsibility. The Executive Committee of the Garden City PTA strongly supports the 2025-2026 school budget. We urge all community members to vote yes for the budget on May 20th in support of our children, public education, and community. We appreciate all of the Board of Education's current and continuing efforts to meet the challenges ahead, and we encourage you to continue to work collaboratively with parents through PTA and SEPTA to tackle future challenges to our budget together. Thank you on behalf of the Executive Committee of the Garden City PTA.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you for your time. My name is Melissa Dubois, and I'm the Global Education Advisor at CIEE. We award over $7 million in scholarships, both academic merit and financial need, for students to go abroad during the summer for 3 or 4 week programs. I was wondering if I could schedule a call with one of you to discuss how we could support your students, as they could get 4 college credits or up to 50 hours of community service and the Global Seal of Biliteracy. I work with schools all over Long Island, especially some neighboring ones. And, you know, I'm an alumni of CIE, so I know how beneficial these programs can be for students' futures.
Sure. If you contact Ms. Papalardo, she'll give you the information.
Great. I have my card in the folder. I was wondering if I.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, Deborah Dangler, 142 Kildare Road. I had spoken to the board back in December about the English curriculum and the changes that were made. Because a lot of parents are asking, because I have older kids, so I have a kid in grad school, college, high school, and I have a 6th grader. And the curriculum that my 6th graders have been receiving is not the same English curriculum that my older children received. It's very drastic. It's very different. And parents don't understand the difference. Like if you say balanced literacy, you say explicit instruction, they're a little confused. So when I described the ELA curriculum in December, I described the ELA curriculum from 2015, and that was when Garden City was ranked #1 in Nassau County for English on the ELA state exam, I meant, for 6th grade. We used to give presentations to the community, and it used to be broken down with rankings comparing us to other districts by grade. Then it would compare us even around the country. Like there was some presentations where you could see how we compared to other countries. So I wanted to update the board because in 1987, the 6th graders moved from Stratford and Stewart School. They moved over to the present day middle school. It used to be called the junior high. And one of the promises that was made to the community was the literacy block would stay in place. That's the 2 periods of English. So from 1987 to 2021, 6th graders had 2 periods of English. So the present 10th graders right now had 2 periods of English, and then that ended. It was removed. And it was replaced with a class called exploratory. And this class keeps changing every year. And this year, the way the class runs is you do 1 week English, 1 week math, 1 week social studies, 1 week science. There's no grades in the class. There's no assignments, there's no grades. The kids figured that out pretty quick within probably the first month of school. So we replaced a core class, a 2nd period of English, with exploratory, which I'm hoping we can change and go back to the double period for the 6th graders, because when I look at the reading scores, it's essential. I mean, these kids need the reading, the writing, they need the 2 periods of English to learn all the vocabulary, the grammar, everything. So what I wanted to do was, last time when I was here in December, I compared the first quarter between 3 of my kids and the last child to show you the difference in the assessments, because there's 3 ways we assess kids. We have the state ELA, we have the NWA, and then we have quarter grades. But what's deceptive is there's not as many assessments being given to the kids now as compared to back then. So the class of 2021, which was when we were number one in ELA, they had in the second quarter, they had a spelling and vocabulary test for chapter 4, a spelling and vocabulary test for chapter 5, a spelling and vocabulary test for chapter 6, a spelling and vocabulary test for chapter 7. They read the book Where the Red Fern Grows. They had a test on it. They read the book The Lightning Thief. They had a test on chapters 1 through 7. They had a verb test. They had a preposition quiz. They had an ELA midterm. My child didn't have an ELA midterm this year. He had midterms in his other classes. They did a book report. They did a compare contrast essay. That was 90% of their grade. The other 10% was homework. It's not even listed. It was never listed. Like they had homework almost every night. It was checked, and then they would get 1 grade for homework. Now compare that to my 6th grader today, second quarter, English. He had an intro to nonfiction test, a grammar test on the sentence, and he wrote a clear paragraph on theme. And that was it. He had 3 assessments. 70% of his grade was assessments, and then 30% of his grade was homework / classwork. So you see the drastic difference in the assessments between the class of 2021 and the class of 2031. So then I looked at, and I foiled the NWEA scores for the present 6th graders. Mr. Capio provided it to me. So when they entered Stratford School in 2nd grade, the 6th graders had, for the fall 20 on the NWEA, 89%. So they were home from school. In 1st grade, it shut down from COVID. They returned, and the GC mean for the class was 89%. Then in the winter, it went to 82%. In the spring of 21, it dropped to 78%. They returned in 3rd grade. In the fall, it was 79%. And then in the spring, it was 70%. 4th grade, they returned. In the fall, it was 68%. In the winter, it was 67%. In the spring, it was 62%. In 5th grade, the fall, it was 65%. In the winter, it was 64%. In the spring, it was 62%. So we went from an 89% in 2nd grade down to a 62%. And this is the mean for the entire grade. So it's not just one child. This is a whole grade. Their reading scores are going down. And what's impacting it is the curriculum. That's a curriculum issue when you have all these kids now struggling. In 6th grade, they took the NWEA in the fall. But the problem with the data is they took the test a month later. So you can't compare what they did in the fall of 23 with the fall of 24 because they had an extra couple of weeks of instruction. But their GC mean was 72%. So it went up, but it's hard to judge it. Now, the class did not take the winter NWEA, but there's a spring NWEA. And what I was hoping is if they could take the spring NWEA at the same time as they took it in 5th grade, so we can compare that data to see how much they improved. So that was my question about the NWEA data, because there's no set date on the calendar as to when they're taking the exam. I had asked at a previous meeting. I don't know if it was decided.
So specifically around the timeline, NWEA has windows during which they allow for certain administration. So the administration of the NWEA and the fall administration, there's a window between the beginning and the end. So in order for you to administer the fall, you would have to do it within that window. Their data cycle suggests that if you do that, you have valid and reliable data for that window. So that month in there, according to NWEA, doesn't have a statistically relevant impact for the comparison. The other thing I wanted to ask is, I know that you have the GC mean, but the national mean is also available as well. And if I looked correctly, the GC mean is consistently above the national mean by about the same margin. So there's, and I just say that because there's some complexity around looking
No, I
at that data.
understand, but we're a top performing district and I want us to return to being a top performing district. And we had that with an 89% mean. I don't see that with a 62%, and I don't even see that with a 72%. To me, that's not good enough. It's a reading school. These kids can read if taught with the correct curriculum. And they've shown that with an 89% returning to school from COVID. There's no reason why there should be this consistent decline in their reading scores, which brings me to my next point. In comparing the two curriculums, I spoke to you about the read aloud. That's something new. So my older three kids, they read the books out loud when they were in 6th grade in the middle school. They all had copies of books. They took turns reading out loud and they discussed the books. They had to answer questions on the books. They had to look up vocabulary words. They had tests on the books. So now the 6th graders do something called a read aloud. And from September to March, they did a read aloud of the book Unplugged. Now they're doing a read aloud of the book A Long Walk to Water. And my son's not a fan of the read aloud. I don't really understand how it's helping him for the state ELA exam because he's not reading the book and none of the kids in the class are reading the book. The teacher's reading the book. So then I looked at the comprehensive approach to literacy. It used to be online, but it was removed, but I had saved it. And it talks about the read aloud. But what it talks about for the read aloud is, first it says it's for K through 5. And then it says a read aloud to support immersion literacy. It says it's always a picture book. This isn't a picture book. This is a chapter book. There's no pictures in it. So I didn't know if there was some confusion as to why 6th graders are doing this read aloud. Because when I read this, it's not appropriate to 6th graders unless it's changed and it's been updated because I didn't see this online anymore.
Ms. Dangler, maybe if you could.
It's
Sorry.
a 32-page booklet.
Yeah, it's there. I have it up right now.
Okay, do you see what I'm talking about? It says for K through 5, and then I saw it's always a picture book. I'm just trying to understand why my 6th grader has to listen to the teacher read the book out loud instead of the kids reading the book.
And I mean, maybe I could suggest maybe two things. Maybe, I mean, you can speak to the teacher and maybe that would help resolve the question because I don't think anybody here is that knowledgeable about what goes on in every individual class. But also maybe for me and others, if you could send some of these questions that are very detailed and very specific, you've done a lot of research. If you could share that with us in advance, because it's really hard to follow.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know it's well researched, but just, the details and some of the background, it's hard for us to kind of research and respond, I think, effectively real time. So if you have detailed questions, obviously sent to Mrs. Bowman and she can inform the board and we can have maybe a better conversation about some of these questions.
All 3 clusters are doing all the same stuff. So it's not an individual teacher question, it's a curriculum question. Like all 3 clusters, that means every single kid in 6th grade is doing the same thing in English. So me asking, for instance, in the fall, the kids were given a list of book clubs to choose from. And I looked at the list and I looked at the Lexile numbers and they were all below grade level. They were below 6th grade, what the state considers the correct band for 6th through 8th grade for the state exam. And one of them stood out. It was Escape from Mr. Lemoncello's Library because my kids read that as summer reading in 3rd grade at Stratford. And this was now on a 6th grade list. And when I asked if my son could read a different book, I was told he wasn't allowed. He had to do a book from this specific list. So that was the one book he read was Masterminds, which was below grade level. But now the kids haven't read a book since then. They've been doing this read aloud. So I'm trying to understand why this is continuing because I know they don't have the books and the teacher's reading it aloud, which brings me to the budget and textbooks. Because I had asked previously if the kids could get vocabulary books. And I was wondering if it was part of the budget, if vocabulary books were going to be purchased this year. For grades 4 through 8, they used to have the Sadlier book And that was removed. So I was wondering if it could be purchased. And when I looked at the budget, and I had asked that the last time I had brought up that only $8,339 was spent on textbooks at the middle school in 23-24, even though more money was budgeted. So I assume there's some extra money for the middle school to purchase books. And the approved budget for this year was $29,199. I didn't know if all that money was spent on books. And next year you proposed $29,885 for books for the middle school. In comparison to the high school, which is $64,864. So that was my question. I did ask about the vocabulary books. That's why I'm following up to see if it's part of the budget. And when I looked at other districts, you can go online and you can see their budgets. And some districts actually list all the books that are going to be purchased, so parents don't have to ask.
I think that question has been answered about the vocabulary books.
Are we purchasing them?
And I believe that it had been answered a couple weeks ago that they were using more contextual vocabulary with the lists from the works that they have been reading. So I believe that had already been answered.
Well, when my son's teacher, I did ask how vocabulary is being taught this year. She told me it was an organic process, which I was a little confused about, but he explained it. So she'll stop and say a word and maybe write it on the board, but the kids don't write the word down. The kids don't get tested on the word. So how do you know the children are actually learning the vocabulary words?
So I can actually speak to this. I'm a big proponent of reading and writing, as everyone has heard many times. So my son actually does get a list of vocabulary words from the books that he's reading. He's in 8th grade.
Yeah, my son gets one in 10th grade, but my 6th grader doesn't.
Well, I believe the high school is different, but we're talking about the middle school and moving away from the vocabulary books into contextual and they, I mean, at least, and I think to Joe's point, each teacher may be different, but I know my 8th grader gets a list of vocabulary words in writing on a piece of paper that he does get tested on. And so maybe if like very specific for your son's 6th grader, I don't know, maybe you should ask the teacher or ask, this Dr. Bowman about very specifically that class, because I know it is happening in other classes.
I think that's great. Your son gets it in 8th grade, but I haven't heard any 6th graders get that.
Well, I think again.
And if you're reading below grade level books, how does that help you with the vocabulary if you have to have grade
I think
level?
Mrs. Dengler, just going back to some emails, and it looks like Mr. Samuelson has addressed your concerns. That was way back in February.
I know he doesn't
yeah.
believe in the vocabulary books. That's why I'm asking.
So I think, what Ms. Gaffney is saying, that is how we want the kids to use the vocabulary words that they see in the books that they're reading, and they are being taught. And I think, he addresses that in this, in the email to you as well. Like I said, if you have very specific questions, then maybe it's a good idea for Dr. Bowman, for you and Mr. Samuelson and Ms. Kaufman to sit with Ms. Dengler.
Absolutely.
And I would include the teachers in that too. All right. And address every single one of those questions and as to the why.
Absolutely.
That's how I would do that.
Okay, I just think reading comprehension is so important and vocabulary is so important to understand the passages, which is why I think it'd be great to have, in addition to those lists with the vocab words from the books, a vocab book with actual, with more vocabulary words. Because that's what the kids used to have when we were doing well. Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up really quick and just say I had the same experience in 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade with both my kids at the middle school, where we're not getting access to grade level vocabulary, where the read alouds were below grade level read alouds. My son is in 7th grade now, and they actually read aloud a picture book without words. That was part of the read aloud. No words in the book, just looking at pictures. And then another book they read was a 2nd grade book, and that was a read aloud. So I'm not really sure how that would rise to the level of meeting the New York State standards, which require grade level comprehension skills, inferencing skills, and vocabulary. And it's we're missing that. If we're picking books that are below grade level, how are we meeting those standards and how are we developing vocabulary that's appropriate in grade level?
I think, again, to go back to the question about specificity, it's important to also not decontextualize those situations, right? I don't know the context through which those read alouds occurred. I don't know the points, the teaching points of the lesson, but I think we can all agree that vocabulary is best taught in context, right? Explicit direct instruction of vocabulary will support comprehension growth if it's
If you're
done
using grade
in the
level
context.
stuff, but you're not.
Well, right, I think, and again, I think it's important to have a follow-up conversation, but leveled how, right? Because the book Night, for example, by Elie Wiesel is on a very low Lexile. However, I wouldn't necessarily think it would be an appropriate text to give to a very young student. And there are, so I think, why don't, if it's okay with you, I think to have these very specific conversations, we'll set up an opportunity for you and I to have that.
Yeah, that would be
conversation.
great. I'm just concerned about vocabulary is cumulative. It's not something you can cram for. The kids are going to have to take SATs at some point, and they're going to be missing a lot of words that that would be SAT words that you would normally not use in your common everyday language or your written work, but they're words that you really should know, even though you may not use them all the time, and you may not even be exposed to them in books. So I think we're really setting our students up for a less robust education and rigorous education if we're removing a vocabulary book that included words and explicit instruction. And like, for instance, a Sadlier book, I bought it myself because I knew Matthew wasn't getting it and I knew that he would benefit from support. So I work with him with that at home. I don't expect the school to do everything. I do a lot myself with him just to build up his ELA skills. And it really is a great resource, and it is explicit, it's structured, it includes passages, it has antonyms, synonyms, using the words in sentences, fill-ins. And it's just a good addition to use to help, supplement what they're doing in the class, because you're not going to hit all those words, and especially since our kids had them beforehand and they did well on the SATs. And we do have a very high top performing high school, but you get there by building that foundation. And if we're missing that foundational component, then what's going to happen when they get to high school? They're going to be at more of a disadvantage.
I also want to address this because my son and all three of mine went through the middle school. My
Sure.
son was in 7th grade last year and in 8th grade. And I think I also had the vocabulary book. We quizzed them and
Yeah.
I know all about that. And I do think it was great, but I will also say it's not exactly fair to say that they're not doing vocabulary and they're not doing grade level vocabulary, because I am on my kids' reading and they were most recently doing a vocabulary list that came from the Shakespeare.
Mhm.
And so again, I would say they were reading something that was harder.
Right, that's very hard.
Right, and, but I applaud the teachers for doing that, and I think the vocabulary was very challenging.
Right, and that's appropriate, and
And
that's
I
free
would
teaching.
say that was my experience in 7th grade as well with the books that they were reading. However, I understand that it's all different, and that's why I think very, very class-specific concerns have always been addressed when I've gone to teachers.
Right.
And so I think it's just not fair to say we're not teaching.
No, and I understand that.
We're
No,
not teaching vocabulary that's appropriate.
right, I understand what you're saying, and I totally get that. I know there's definitely different teaching styles and different things that are going to be highlighted depending on which teacher you have, and I get that, and that's normal. But the one thing that we had was consistency with that vocabulary book, because in a sense, it provided a blanket, like everybody's going to get access to these words no matter what teacher you have. And you had that scope and sequence. So you knew at least they were getting that. Because what if one teacher spends more time on one book, or they pick a different book? I mean, it's hit or miss, and it would be nice to have.
I'm not, I don't disagree, and we can debate, is it better just to have a standardized everything?
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think you need both, like what we had before, because it worked well. It seemed to work well from our data from the high school.
If I can just say one thing, and we are getting the review done, that may be a recommendation that comes from there. Well, we're hoping to get that before the end of the school year. So.
Is that review going to be made public? Are you going to publish that?
Yeah, we've said that at the board meetings that will be, reviewed publicly. And of course, we'll have that on the website. We've done that with
And
various
who's
studies.
providing the professional development for the last couple of years in science of reading? Like,
We've had
who's been the provider for that?
internal people that have gone to the training and they have brought it back and trained?
Which training?
They've had several trainings through BOCES. They've had it, the regional trainings. There's been state trainings. So we've had a significant amount of training. I think Ms. McLaughlin with the PD, we've had how many teachers? We have a lot of teachers even who finished the micro credentialing with the science of reading. So we've had,
It's
what is,
fine.
yeah.
I could get that.
That's great. Thank you.
Dr. Sinha, could we just get a quick follow-up to us at some point this week? You know, it would concern me if the sixth graders are reading a book, even out loud, at a second or third grade level. Could we just check on that? And I don't understand why, but could we either put it to rest or figure out why we're doing it?
I know we had looked, I know Dr. Bowman had spoken to, and I think she mentioned it earlier, is that it's the context of what is being taught and what is the teaching point of the lesson. And I don't think it's something new that's this year from speaking to Dr. Bowman, when you spoke with the team, that this is not something new that is being done this year.
No.
Good evening, everybody. It's Rich Correa, Meadbrook Road. On the second read of the IEE policy, I just had a few questions. Number one, in the independent educational evaluation policy, we are stipulating that, well, let me back up a second. I was searching on the policies. I couldn't necessarily find a specific policy related to internal evaluation procedures. Do I have that wrong, Dr. Sinha? I don't know if you know off the top of your head, but in other words,
You don't, the internal, this is just for external. If a parent is requesting an independent educational evaluation, that's not in district, that's out of district.
no, sure. But my question is, do we have a similar policy addressing how we approach whether it's initial eligibility testing or reevaluation testing for students ourselves internally? Do we have I couldn't find
We
one
don't have
similar to the IEE policy.
No, we follow what the state education department outlines for us in terms of the evaluation process, the CSE, we meet with the parents, but there's no internal, we have a process and procedures, but there's no internal policy related to that.
You have a process and procedures, but no internal policy. Okay. Could you just unwrap that for a little bit? So you're saying we just have informal policies. Is that in terms of how we go about fielding initial eligibility or reevaluation testing of students who may have special needs, for instance?
So if I could, I don't mean to interrupt my.
Sure.
Ms. Jacobson, District Council, I just want to clarify your question. I think your question is a bit unclear. Can you restate it?
Sure. Yeah, so in other words, on the agenda, we have a second reading of the IEE policy. And my initial question is, do we have a similar policy with regard to how we handle internal testing, not independent testing of a similar nature, but how we test
When you say we, you mean?
the district?
So what I would recommend is, and I know you probably know this very well, and anybody in the community knows this very well, school district policies are all either posted, and any updates there too are part of the reading process pursuant to the district's policy on policy. So any policy, capital P, would be listed on the district's website. If there is another policy that you are interested in, I would be happy to help find that for you.
Yeah, no, I didn't want to assume because I didn't, it wasn't obvious to me. I didn't find anything, but I didn't want to assume. So I wanted to just ask the question and see if, maybe I missed it. Maybe I word searched it incorrectly or something. But it sounds like we have processes, but not necessarily a formal policy. Is that fair?
I don't quite know the answer to your question. I think your question is a bit unclear to my knowledge, but what I can do is I can provide you with all of the formal policies, with all the Board of Education policies that relate to evaluations. I can provide that for you, which would be subject to disclosure pursuant to any, freedom of information law requests anyway. But as a courtesy, I can provide all of those policies.
That's fine. Yeah, I did search for all evaluation related policies, and nothing came up germane to what I'm saying. In other words, parent comes to you and says, hey, I think there may be a problem. I think I'm concerned about this. You know, I want my student tested. The district then goes and performs an evaluation, right?
Well, I think
Is there a policy for that,
we're talking
right?
about a
Process.
number of different types of evaluations. You could be talking about a special education evaluation. You could be talking about a math
I'm
evaluation.
talking about special education because, again, the question's in the context of the IEE, right? Which is,
Right, but so in the context of a special education evaluation, the district does have policies pursuant to the IDEA, Individuals Disabilities Education Act, and those are all posted and publicly available. So those are the policies that we have. To the extent that there would be a discussion that could implicate a particular child, that's not something that we can discuss here.
no, yeah, I'm not talking about specific children. I'm just saying generally, and I could follow up with you after this because it's not, it sounds like there may be a policy somewhere. It's just not obvious that it's a board policy alongside like the IEE policy, for instance. I couldn't find anything. So that was that, but I could follow up, I guess, with you or whoever.
I would be happy to help provide any other, clarifications or disclosures of any, public document that we would be able to provide to you.
Thank you. Yeah. No, it could, because the IE policy itself, I do have some concerns about it. You know, the definition of one evaluation. What does that mean? I think the district takes a pretty interesting position on that. So I don't know if there's an answer to that.
I don't know that that's a clear question. There are a myriad of definitions of the word evaluation, but to the extent that you're talking about a specific type of evaluation under the special education realm, that's something that we can talk about outside of a Board of Education policy. To answer your, global question, there is no policy that talks about any other type of evaluation other than the specific evaluations that are already within school district policies. But if there are other documents, not school board policies, I would be glad to help find any such document that you are requesting.
Well, no, just to clarify, the question is sort of straightforward. The policy for independent educational evaluations, right? So we're talking about the district has tested my student. Maybe they did a psychoeducational assessment. I disagree with what they found. So I go to the district and I say, I'd like an independent assessment. And this is the policy that we are talking about right now that's on the board agenda tonight. In that policy, it clearly states that a parent under those circumstances is entitled to one evaluation. My question to you is very simple and direct. How do you define one evaluation?
So, again, I would refer straight to the statute and the state regulation that would define.
All right, so we're directing parents to look at the statute and the regulations. And to me, that's inadequate. It's just not a clear answer. And I think it's an ambiguity. And I think one of the overarching concerns here is that, these things cost money. Nobody wants to spend a ton of money, period, full stop. Probably the best policy would be to evaluate and uncover problem areas before a parent gets to the point where they're saying, you know what, whatever you did, district, I disagree with it. So now I want to go and get all these evaluations done. Probably the best scenario is to avoid getting there in the first place, right? Not always possible. So, and that's why I sort of started with what are we doing internally to sort of head that off if possible. I think that's ideal.
If I'm understanding you correctly, are you suggesting and offering a potential amendment to the proposed policy? That's certainly something that we can listen to.
Well, not necessarily, not in terms of what we're just discussing. I think there's a few issues here. Yeah, I think, we want to be clear as a district as to how we go about detecting and assessing areas of need. It's a clear obligation that we have. It's an affirmative obligation that we have. And I think if we're doing it right, we are avoiding more expensive problems down the line. And I think now my concern is we're doing it the opposite way. And, you know, a parent, and it's not to impugn anybody doing the assessments, you know, there were always externalities and pressures everyone's operating under. But right now it's sort of the opposite. You know, a parent comes along and says, I'm just not happy with what I'm seeing here. It doesn't seem to capture what's going on with my kid. So I want the independent. And then there's issues that go along with that, right? So to me, the better course of action would be, let's really tighten up our processes internally to head that off and not have it be an issue to the greatest extent possible. And I think you do that with clear policy, with clear direction. It's a big part of it. The second part, I'll try to be quick because I know everybody, you know, we've been here a while, but
I thank you for your public comment on that, on the first part. Well,
no, and I'm happy to follow up with you because I don't want to take too much time, but it's on the agenda. So the other part of this is there is a policy that I've come to learn about where parents are diverted to an internal team meeting to discuss the IE requests. And I think it's problematic for numerous reasons. Again, I'm happy to talk with you offline, but I think for just the public's understanding, you know, if you're saying to a parent, look, we're going to gather as a team and talk about your independent evaluation request. I just think we're playing with fire there. And I want to see us avoid problems and get the child what he or she needs as soon as possible without the delay, without any nonsense. I don't see that listed as part of this IE policy. And that's troublesome to me. I'm not comfortable saying more at this point, but I think that's a problem that I would like to follow up with you on, if that's okay.
thank you for your
In another
interest.
forum. All right. I don't know if you have any questions for me, but
I appreciate the comment.
all right. Thank you.
Well taken.
$16,845 for the fiscal year 2025-2026 adopts the property tax report card.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? There's, I think, a few nominees for the BOCES, trustees. The board has had discussions and seen materials. There was a Teams meeting, was it from Monday, where they did some interviews with the candidates for people who were able to join that and listen. The candidates and nominees, there's Robert Schuman. I'm saying that right? I don't think I am. Michael Angelini, Dennis, Joey Pascarella. Those are the four nominees, and there was one other, Jamie. Sorry, there's another gentleman. Michael Jamies. Thank you, Mr. O'Donoghue. So we'll vote shortly on our three candidates. Does anybody have any questions or wish to discuss any of the candidates? Okay. At this time, the motion of the Board of Education approves the following resolution. Be resolved that the Board of Education of the Garden City Union Free School District approves the Board of Cooperation Education Services of Nassau County, BOCES, as administration operations budget for the 2025-2026 school year in the amount of $34,696,215.
So moved. Second.
The Board of Education approves the following resolution. Be it resolved that the Board of Education casts its votes for Robert Shaw, Pascarella.
Second.
All in favor? So consent agenda to approve multiple items identified in the agenda. If anyone wishes to have the agenda item pulled out, please speak now. Then we can vote on that item separately. If there are no requests to pull out any items, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes business of the board items K1 through K7, matters L1 through L7, business office matters items M1 through M19, and special education matters M1 through M2. So, should you have any business? Or have any new business? Future Board of Education meetings, Tuesday, May 13th, 2025, work session, 8:15 here at the Garden City High School. And the following meeting will be the following week, Wednesday, May 20th, regular session, 8:15 at the Garden City High School. At this time, we motion that there being no further business to come before the board, the meeting is adjourned. All in favor? Aye.